As pastor church resources consultants, we often get phone calls or emails from pastors and council members who are feeling stuck. They're in the middle of a transition they're struggling to manage. They're receiving complaints they don't know what to do with. They have disagreements with each other that they don't know how to resolve. Some aspect of leadership or community life has gone off the rails or threatens to go off the rails, and they've reached out for some advice. And they've invited us to meet with their counsel for a consultation. And we thought it would be helpful to share some of the values that we bring in to our consultation work so that you have an idea of what you might expect if you were to call us. So our first value is to slow down. When things go sideways, our first instinct is to do something, anything at all. And the trouble is that the something that we choose to do in that moment, while it often takes not much work now, it usually leads to much more work down the line. Slow down. Don't just do something for the sake of doing something. Most importantly, when you slow down, you make the second value possible. You can listen better. Listening well is our second value. See, it's too easy in the face of challenges to let the loudest, most confident, most strident voice just decide what you're going to do. But as consultants, we will listen to you, and we'll try to help you listen to each other and try to listen to those who are affected by your decision. And most of all, we'll try to help you listen to the voice of God, the voice that is most necessary to hear for the kind of leadership we hope to provide. Listening to God's voice is the first step toward our third value, growing in awareness of God. See, in the heat of conflict, when we sometimes lose sight of the fact that we are not called first to merely make decisions. We are called first to spiritual discernment. We're interested not just in what can make the pain or stress of this moment go away as quickly as possible, but instead, what might God be trying to do in us right now, even through this painful season? What might God be trying to show us about ourselves or about our church through this unsettled time? Throughout Scripture, God often does his very best work when God's people are unsettled, out of sorts, and uncomfortable. Pay attention to what God is doing and revealing at this moment. Our fourth value is to grow in self-awareness. Often when PCR is called in, we find that there are kind of two sides of a conflict that are both working very hard to convince us how awful the other side is. How if we just got rid of those people or that person, everything would be fine again. And of course, it's important for us to listen and pay attention to the whole picture. But one of our values in consultation is to help every single person we meet gain a better sense of how they have contributed to the situation. Too often we spend a lot of our energy trying to name and blame scapegoats. It's her fault, it's his fault, it's their fault. But we believe that part of the power of the gospel is in recognizing, right alongside the psalmist, that I have sinned. I have sinned and done what is evil in God's sight. Restored community is not possible if we just find the most blameworthy person and cast them out. Restored community is possible when we all come to the foot of the cross together as sinners in need of God's forgiveness and healing. We need to understand how we have contributed to this situation. Our fifth value is fairer process. Again, in the heat of conflict or in a season of transition, some of our worst impulses come up. We tend to cut corners. We get too secretive. We think that the end of calming things down justifies really almost any means. As consultants, we will help you identify and follow better process to make sure that not just your decision honors God and builds up the church, but actually the way that you make and communicate that decision honors God and builds up the church. And that leads to our sixth value. Our sixth value is to empower everyone to do the work they have to do. So it's not uncommon when we arrive at a church for a council member or a pastor. They're reeling from the pain and conflict all around them. They'll confide in us. I didn't know I was signing up for this. And we often will say, that's fair. You didn't know that you were signing up for this. But God did. And what's more, you didn't sign up for this. You were called to this. In the Christian Reformed Church, we do not believe that someone just signs up to be a pastor or signs up to be an elder or deacon. God calls people to those tasks. And the church affirmed that call. That means that God knew that you and your gifts would be needed at this very moment. So as consultants, we won't make decisions for you. We won't do things for you. We will empower you and equip you to lead the church that God has called you to lead. Our final value is that we believe that reconciliation is possible. Maybe not right now, maybe not in the way that you or someone else envisions, but almost all of what we know about Christian discipleship in the New Testament is written in the form of letters addressed to churches in the midst of conflict. Which means God has been forming disciples almost exclusively within churches where there are differences and tension and disagreement. And yet, make disciples he has. In other words, we bring hope to our work. Hope, it's not based on what we can perceive with merely human eyes, but we bring hope because we believe that Christ loves his church, that Christ's Spirit lives and works within that church and her members, and that he is the God who is with us always to the very end of the age. If you'd like to learn more about how Pastor Church resources might be able to serve you or your church, check us out at crcna.org/PCR.